Hafaday Guam. I'm Adriana Cotero, and I am joined with Superintendent Jon Fernandez for a weekly update on the ongoing efforts for reopening the school year. In addition, we also have some news coming down from USDOE on the high-risk status. So, Jon, thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
No, we're good. Lots going on. Absolutely. We're in the middle of trying to reopen our school system, or at least plan for the opening of the school system. But also, we have the USDOE doing their virtual here this week. So we're trying to keep our focus on as many things as possible and try to do as good a job as possible on every front. So, yep, absolutely, lots of things.
So let's start with that. So on the high risk status, let's get an update on where we're at with that. In addition, so they'll be visiting virtually then? There'll be a meeting?
Right. So actually for the starting yesterday or early in the morning, because of the time zones, they're doing this in their evening hours. We're kind of doing this in our morning hours, and it'll be a 3-day virtual monitoring visit. So it's being conducted online, and a lot of focus groups and one-to-one conversations. I think they're doing a virtual tour of our warehouse and just having a lot of getting a lot of updates as to where we are in terms of addressing the financial management deficiencies that led us to being designated high risk and to having to have special conditions imposed on our federal funds. And one of those conditions, of course, as everybody knows, is the requirement for a third-party fiduciary to manage our funds. Every year we spend about $2.5 million to have them in charge of those funds. It's been as high as $4 million. I think over the last 8 years, we've paid, I'm sure, above $26 million to the third party. And we're really trying to get back to a situation where our progress is acknowledged. We can remove these special conditions, reduce the role of the third party, and return some of these resources to our school system. So 2 years ago, we requested reconsideration. Over the last year, we've been working hand in hand with the USDOE on what we call a reconsideration evaluation plan, which we submit evidence of all the progress that we've made on every in every area that we were working on. And then they were supposed to do an on-site visit in April of this year. And this was supposed to be the final visit, give us a grade, give us the findings, and make a decision. But because of COVID-19, that didn't happen. I didn't really want to lose the opportunity, so I really pushed to see if we could still do some type of visit this summer, even in the midst of all the things that we're doing to prepare for opening of the school year. And so this is the week that they agreed to. There's a team of about 5 people being led by Risk Management Services. And at the end of the visit, we hope to get an official written finding as to how we did, where the progress has been validated, and then hopefully, again, a decision to remove some of the special conditions, if not all of them, and definitely reduce the dependency on a third-party fiduciary agent.
So how soon could you hear some feedback from them after this meeting?
So we'll have our exit meeting with them tomorrow, and at that point, I'm hoping to hear from them. I'm hoping it's no longer than 30 days to get those results. But obviously, they're going to have to formalize it and get it approved at higher levels. But it started off positively. Everyone who's been interacting with them has said these are pretty positive meetings. I told our employees, be proud of what you're doing. You've come a long way. We've got a lot of things that are good that we can showcase, and let's make the most of the opportunity. So I'm hoping for good results.
And something that we've been obviously closely following is the third-party fiduciary. So being released from that condition and being able to put some of these resources back into the system, what would that money be used for? If you could especially during the pandemic.
Well, exactly. I mean, given the fact that we are entering a situation where there's a lot of budgetary uncertainty, a lot of economic uncertainty, every dollar is important for us to make sure that we can support our school system, during the coming year. And it's my intent to return as much of that money to the schools as possible. We've looked at different ways to support the central office in addressing these financial management issues. And as we've gone through that, I think that we have the capacity and capability within our current organization to address most of those responsibilities. I mean, I don't think we're going to need to build a whole new office or a whole new division to do it. We may want to identify a couple of personnel, a couple of positions that need to be filled, but definitely not nothing that's as significant as creating a new unit to do what we should be already be able to do. So we hope that the vast majority of that money can be sent back to support our school level operations.
And, just going into money and budget, are you anticipating a reduction in budget for the remaining of the year or even fiscal year 2021?
Well, I hope not for the remainder of the year. I mean, obviously, we're well aware that there is a financial impact from COVID-19 and the economic shutdown of the island, but we haven't been informed, by the budget office, the government budget office, as to any adjustments that are being made. We're getting to the start. As you get to the start of the school year, those are things we need to know. Otherwise, we won't be able to make those adjustments. We're lucky to have the federal funds to support us through this particular time, and spending those dollars on safety supplies and so forth will be helpful and not require us to dip into our local funds. Now, what the legislature does about the next year's budget, that's where it's going to be interesting to see what happens. There is a federal requirement to basically have a maintenance of effort in order to access the federal funds that we've been given. And that maintenance of effort requires that the department be funded at a level equivalent to the average of our past 3 years of appropriations. So what that amount is what's being requested to support the Guam Department of Education going forward. And that's an amount I'm estimating to be around $225 million in order to meet that requirement.
Okay, and let's go into reopening of the school year. We know that the parent surveys, they last Friday was the deadline for you guys to receive them. So if you could just give us some of the preliminary information that you received from those surveys, and also have you spoke directly with the governor and lieutenant governor if they support these plans for reopening?
So I'll do a couple of things. One is, yes, we just got off a meeting earlier this morning with the lieutenant governor, who really has been leading our conversations with the other agencies as well. So we understand that they are, our plan has been reviewed by public health. They are looking at developing and hopefully soon publishing a set of minimum safety standards that can be met. And at least at this point, I've been assured that we do meet or exceed some of those requirements. So again, that goes to face masks and social distancing and the other things that all schools want to ensure that we're meeting. So that's in place. We do I believe bus guidelines have been drafted and are going to be finalized soon. So we'll be meeting with the Department of Public Works around those issues. We're just trying to set that meeting up to get into the details of how buses will work this coming school year. And then we did ask for guidance relative to interscholastic sports. We've been thinking about, rescheduling sports so that we have our high risk sports later in the school year versus, our low contact sports maybe earlier in the school year. However, we do want the medical experts to weigh in on this issue, and so we've asked for guidance as to what will be allowed when it comes to the interscholastic sports season. So hopefully in the next week or so we'll get more clarity from that side. Now on the survey, we did for parents to submit their preference for either the home learning online, home learning with hard copy materials, or the face-to-face instruction, which really would operate on an alternating schedule. So you're actually going to be the first to hear our preliminary data. We'll just clarify that it is preliminary. We are missing a couple of schools that we're still waiting for their information to be scrubbed and submitted. And overall, we do anticipate there will be a portion of our school community that has not yet responded. So as of today, I'm aware of about 24,000 responses that have been registrations that we're tracking. and roughly 16,000 responses overall to the survey. And again, that's missing 3 schools. And then, at the end of the day, I think we're still going to have parents out there who have not yet registered or submitted, that information. But I think we have a pretty good representative amount. I mean, that was a good response from the community at this stage of the summer. Overall, what we're looking at is, if you look at all levels and all schools, the preliminary data shows that about 37% of the total enrollment are looking at going online. And then we have an additional 28% who are looking at staying home but learning through hard copy. And then the remaining 35% would be face-to-face, under the alternating schedules. So all in all, that would be 65%. Earlier I've been saying maybe around 70%, but it looks like at this point, the preliminary information across the schools shows that that we're looking at the possibility of 65% opting to stay home, either online or hard copy, and then 35% coming to school on any day of the week. If you break that down by elementary, middle, and high, it looks like at the elementary level, the population that would opt to stay home is about 60%, and it's pretty much evenly split between online and hard copy, and then the other 40% coming to school. So it's kind of an interesting information that at the lower levels with the younger kids, we're getting more students who would be willing to return, versus the 35% for overall. And then for middle and high, it looks like the numbers are similar for both middle and high school. We're seeing about 71% of students staying home, 100%, and that 29% coming to school under the alternating schedules face-to-face. Middle school, it's about a 40-30 split in terms of 40% online and 30%, the rest hard copy. The online percentage goes up to about 50%, when you get to high school versus the 21% hard copy at home. So it looks like, again, as you get into the secondary level, you're looking at closer to that 70% range staying home. And as you get to high school, it looks like more of the high school kids are going to have access to computers or the internet and are opting for online. So we're going to put out more detailed information and more official information when we get the additional numbers, but I don't think that'll change the overall picture. It looks like our parents are really concerned about safety, and they're very hesitant to send kids back to school, and therefore you're getting that 60 to 70% who are going to explore the option of staying home, either online or hard copy.
In the past, there's been shortages with teachers and, with support staff for the one-to-one aides. So now that you're seeing 60 to 70% that do want to do online learning, what kind of efforts will be done to train the teachers, or even are there plans to make any new hires in order to meet these needs and make sure that they're well equipped to provide, the curriculum via online?
So one thing I should clarify is that, I've given you averages, but there are still, but within those average numbers, there are some schools that kind of defy those statistics. So you're going to find several, at least based on these responses, several elementary schools that are going as high as 50 to 60% face-to-face, right? So there are going to be some on the high end who still face-to-face versus, what we were talking about overall. So basically what this data will do is help every school understand the preferences of its students and then organize themselves accordingly for how the teaching and learning will take place at school or at home. And you're absolutely right that it will have two different impacts. Number one is that it's definitely going to require a lot of training and support for distance learning. Some of that support will happen over the summer as we offer training opportunities. And then we are looking at using the very first days, potentially the first week of the school year, to focus on training and preparing teachers to participate in online learning, as well as the other things they need to adjust to for the school year. So we do think that the training and professional development is going to be an important part as we go online or we implement distance learning. The other impact it's going to have is basically on how many teachers are needed and how their time is being spent, for teaching and learning. Are we going to have teams that are going to be totally dedicated to the online, to online instruction? Are teachers going to be required to do all three types of learning, or are they going to be able to focus in on one or two? It depends on the students and what they're asking for, and again, the more that you see our students demanding at-home instruction, the more you're going to have to shift our efforts to address those needs. It might affect, how and where and when place. As you can consider, if you're doing online lessons, it doesn't really, and if you're doing a recorded lesson, you obviously would have more flexibility and so forth. If you're doing live lessons, a different story. So right now, with this data, all the schools are meeting to develop their implementation plans, and then we'll be there to support them as they sort through those questions.
And I want to go back to, you mentioned transportation guidelines, so that you're working with public health and the physicians advisory group. What are some of those ongoing discussions on the transportation?
Well, I think, we actually haven't seen those guidelines yet, but I understand that the physicians group met with DPW to go over their recommendations for social distancing, face coverings, just the safety protocols and responses that take place with the buses. So we've asked to see those guidelines as well, so that we're all working together and clear on what happened. Because as you know, whatever happens on the bus affects what happens at the school, in terms of response and notification of parents, ensuring that kids are safe. So we'll get to that, that discussion shortly. We're trying to set a meeting up where we can, get together and make sure we're on the same page.
And John, if I could also ask you, there's a nationwide shortage with PPE. So if that continues, is there any fear that there could be a pushback for the school calendar year then, especially that we are having the opportunity for face-to-face learning?
Right. I mean, I think a lot of our stakeholders are worried about the same thing. So I want to clarify that, number one, we're not going to open up if our community is not at the appropriate public health level of readiness. So we're waiting for the governor to declare PCOR 3 as one requirement to open. And then I think she's going to give us specific authorization to open when it's safe. So we're working with her on that. I mean, again, the overall island has to be in a position to reopen schools before we actually do that reopening. But the second issue is exactly what you're talking about, the PPE supply. We are working on several fronts to try to address that need. So right now we're working with the Department of Defense through our federal partners there. We're working with FEMA to see how they can assist us in trying to procure and expedite the supplies to Guam. And then we're also working at the local level. Last week we published an indefinite quantity bid to solicit for vendors to be able to provide those supplies to us through the course of the school year. And then we also are considering the possibility of an emergency procurement if that's needed. Again, there's two things that matter. One is the quantity of supplies that are available. And then the second issue is the immediate availability of those supplies. So we may see vendors who come in with great prices, but can't promise that it'll be here, within the next 30 days. Those will be challenges we have to kind of, work through. But we definitely want to know who can get those supplies to us as fast as possible with the start of the school year approaching quickly.
So, so the target date for the start of school year is mid-August. So, but as you mentioned, you need the governor to declare PCOR 3. So if the governor doesn't declare it until, let's say, first week of August, are parents are they supposed to just stay ready then potentially? That
we're looking at different, we're staying in close touch with the governor and lieutenant governor and their team. And what we're planning for is, again, you're right, mid-August, but we are looking at plans for what happens if we're not able to physically open. And so so during the course of the school year, Now, in the event that a school has to shut down for any reason, emergency reason, or a COVID-19 reason, the plan that we have is to shift to 100% home learning during the course of that shutdown. So that plan is in place during the once the school year is gets started. But at the beginning of the school year, we have to decide whether we're able to do that as part of our reopening strategy. So in the event that we don't have the protective supplies, or we're not allowed to physically go back to school, one of the decisions we have to make is whether to start school at the same anticipated time frame, and simply go into the 100% at home learning to start the school year. It still is going to require us to work with teachers and prepare them for that shift. But we're not going to physically have kids back in school if we can't provide some reasonable assurance of their safety.
So you have I guess, essentially a plan B already in
And
place.
C, right. So we're developing multiple plans. I mean, it's a crazy year and a lot of possibilities that we're trying very hard to envision. All the ways in which things can go, in a different way than we anticipate. So, we're definitely targeting mid-August, but looking at all the scenarios and trying to come up with scenarios that would make sense, that can be implemented. And we certainly want to avoid having to push back the school year and not provide any service or any support at all. So we'll again work closely with the governor's office so that we can anticipate whether we have to go to a plan B, as a because of the public health situation.
So I know our time's running out, but there's just a few things I want to cover real quick, if I could. Senator Nelson's request to make one-to-one school aids permanent and not on a year-to-year basis. Is this something you support, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's definitely something we support, and we had that conversation with her and her committee, as well as with our board. The reason why we have one-to-one special education school aids to assist our most vulnerable students really is a matter of funding. And these are employees that are federally funded, and they're in great need, but the resources that are available only allow us to employ a certain number of them on a part-time basis. If we are going to move them into a full-time status, it really is a matter of ensuring that we have the resources to do so, and that's going to have to come from the local government, because our federal funding for special education has remained relatively flat over the past several years. So that's really what it's going to amount to, but we do support it.
Okay, and then later I have an interview with the district psychologist Nadine Cepeda, and we'll be discussing the trainings that are happening. So if you want to just highlight on that before we head out of here, and that's just for social, emotional, any mental health and well-being for students and faculty and staff.
Yeah, well, I know Nadine will be able to walk you through a lot of the details and the importance of that support. But as part of our strategy, and I've emphasized over and over again, we are talking about safety first. We are talking about distance learning as a way to continue our mission of teaching and learning for our kids. And the third thing is to recognize that in this traumatic period of time, in this very and unusual year, we're going to have to deal with employees and students who are coming back, are going to have some adjustments that need to be made to be able to function back in our day-to-day school operation. We have to anticipate that they've been impacted by anxieties, by depression. There may be issues of folks turning to substance abuse or other types of issues at home, and we want to recognize that. We want to be able to identify the signs of those who might need support or services, and before we jump back into the academics, we want to provide them an opportunity to really make that adjustment and transition more smoothly. So we started training here at the central office. We went through 5 hours of a training and also workshop on mental health and mental wellness. And we hope we can build around that through the summer, so we can identify the signs, especially on children, of those who've been impacted greatly by the situation, health-wise, economically, financially, so forth. and we can help them get readjusted to the school year when time comes. And we have a lot of services and supports at the schools. And so we want to make sure that we deploy those resources effectively for the betterment of our kids.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, John. Anything else you want to add at all before we speak with Nadine?
No, again, just thank you again for continuing to allow the community to get updates on what we're doing. And we're going to need to do a lot of communication so that people feel that they understand our priority of safety in the schools and understand how things are going to work in this unusual year ahead. So thank you for that.
Of course. And thank you. Thank you for always making time for us. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, guys.